Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Bleav in Bengals podcast. Here's truly Solomon Wilcots with our Bleav in Bengals insider, Charlie Goldsmith, joining us on the show. And Charlie, look, Cincinnati Bengals take another one on the chin. This is becoming all too familiar in a very sad way. It kind of ruined my Thanksgiving weekend. The fact that we lose to the Pittsburgh Steelers 44-38 is the most combined points scored in the history of the series between these two teams. Help me to understand, first of all, what you see happening with our team. We seem to be spiraling in the wrong direction.
Well, it's getting worse as the season goes along, and it's getting worse as each game goes along. You know, with the exception of maybe the Chargers game, what you're seeing is teams going back to the same concepts, teams taking advantage of a Bengals defense that's not making the adjustments it needs to make, that's not making that's getting beat and is seeing the same vulnerabilities show up time after time. Several examples of that on Sunday. The Steelers pretty much got what they wanted. The Bengals, it's hard to find even one thing that isn't a weakness for this unit right now. It couldn't be more concerning, and I think yesterday was their worst performance of the season.
Pittsburgh Steelers hadn't scored 44 points in the last 6 seasons. And then 400 passing yards for Russell Wilson, helping to resurrect his Hall of Fame career now. People now look at Russell Wilson a lot differently. I wanted to kind of dive into what's going on with the team as a whole, because I think it's beginning to even impact Joe Burrow. After the game on Sunday, he said that he has to play at peak performance just to have a chance to win. Let me just tell you right now, your quarterback shouldn't have to be perfect to win. But right now, that's the sense that he's getting. As 3 turnovers, of course, we know that's too much for a quarterback. But these were tipped balls at the line of scrimmage that were intercepted. It was tipped by a wide receiver before it was intercepted. The pass rush is coming in from behind. He's still holding it with 2 hands, doing everything that you can do. What more can Joe Burrow do to help us win these games?
So TJ Watt's strip sack fumble, that was a play where Burrow just needed one more second because Chase was kind of a deep dagger route, maybe the most reliable route in the Bengals offense for a big play. Chase is coming free. He kind of scared the DB, and he's just about to break open for a 20, 30-yard gain for the Bengals. Burrow, in that moment, kind of as Chase is still creating that separation, he's got 2 choices. He can check the ball down to Drew Sample for a 5-yard gain, or he can keep running and wait to buy that extra tick and then try to make that big play to Chase. And I think that play is a representation of exactly what you're talking about. Burrow adjusting his style of play, because the Bengals need that 30-yard play. They can't afford to just have that 5-yard play. I think there were a lot of moments like that. Like, I would have gone for it on 4th and 6 in their own territory late in the second quarter, even after that false start penalty. You're seeing so many decisions that reveal how little confidence there is, the negative confidence there is in this defense. And it's just hard for, how does that impact an entire team, 1 through 53, when everyone knows that you're just going to have to overcome something you're probably not going to be able to?
Well, I think I can answer that question for you. And it goes back to my time when I was calling games in the broadcast booth for CBS. And I remember sitting and having our production meeting with Peyton Manning. And we were having a conversation about the interceptions of the turnovers, which, by the middle of his career, he was able to control it. You're not going to go through a whole season as a quarterback without throwing some interceptions or without having a turnover. But he felt like there was times when you could risk it and there were times when you shouldn't. He explained it this way, and I think this applies to what Joe Burrow is experiencing right now. He said that when our defense is playing really good, Solomon, I'm not going to push it because I know we can punt, and I'll get the ball back without that scoreboard changing. He said, but if I don't push it and I don't connect on 3rd down, or if I don't convert this 4th down play, they're going to get the ball back. Our defense isn't good enough to stop them. And now I'm chasing points on the scoreboard. We were tied. Now we're trailing. We were trailing by 7. Now we're trailing by 10. He said, that's how the game gets away from you as a quarterback. He said, there are times when you have to risk a turnover because you don't think your defense can get a stop. So you're willing to gamble a little bit more. I don't think Joe was putting the ball in harm's way. I think he was trying to hold on to it, as you described, just trying to hold so that receiver can get open on a deep route instead of having to live with the check down, because the check down is not going to get them the explosive plays that they're looking for. The other strip sack that resulted into a return for a touchdown for the Steelers by Peyton Wilson, he had just hit the top of his drop.
Yeah, that was quick.
They whiffed on the block.
Oh, Brown was hurt. Brown looked hurt on that play, which is part of the problem because you have no confidence in your line depth, so you just need to keep playing an injured Orlando Brown Jr.
Yeah, and Orlando Brown Jr. is great. He is the best of what we got going with this offensive line. He's a phenomenal player. I think he was playing at a Pro Bowl season until he got injured, but he's still trying to play through what is a very painful injury. So we commend him. But I'm just saying, like when Joe, as soon as he got back there, the pressure was on him. I think he's doing all that he can do. I'm just worried right now how much of that is going to impact the way that Cincinnati Bengals fans have these high expectations of their great franchise quarterback, knowing that where they should know that he's doing pretty much all he can do. When you lose 5 games where you've thrown for over 300 yards and 3 touchdown passes, I would just say he's probably has reached peak performance.
And we're projecting forward. What's so interesting to me is like what more can Burrow do? To me, that's off-field stuff. That's Zach has talked specifically about last offseason. His priority was developing the next generation of leaders on the Bengals defense. And so far that hasn't took off. That project is still on the ground. What can Burrow do to, help bring forward a Jermaine Pratt, a Cam Taylor-Britt, some of these young guys on defense? What can Burrow do to, give insight and, perspective as maybe the smartest guy in the room on moves the Bengals need to be making? These aren't things we associate a quarterback doing, but the Bengals have so little that they can rely on that his voice almost should carry that type of weight. Because again, like you look at how this defense was built, the plan, the strategy, the approach, the way they've developed these guys, clearly they need new voices. Burrow is obviously one of probably the smartest voice in the room. We'll probably spend a lot of time over the next couple months talking about kind of on the defensive side in particular, what those new voices look like. But I'd expect Burrow, has some sort of feedback on what the future of that unit, how that kind of tries to get out of this and dig out of this and establish a new identity.
BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for betting online. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting online, it provides you with all of the action and the ability to watch the game as they happen. Now, with the largest selection of odds on everything from football to NBA, even college basketball, NHL, and UFC, and more, just head over to BetOnline today and don't forget to use the promo code Bleav, BLEAV, and you're welcome to use BLEAV for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here. I'm going to go ahead and say this just so Cincinnati Bengals fans truly understand. Leadership is something that's earned, not given. The coach can't give over leadership to a player. The ownership can't say, okay, you're our leader now. It's something that happens organically. It's something that when players start making plays and then they start demanding that other guys make plays. And then, oh, by the way, by virtue of their work ethic during the week, when the lights and the cameras aren't on, they're your hardest workers. They're the best people in the building. Those are the people who not only buy into the culture, they represent the culture. They don't talk about it, they live it. And through that success, there's this sure charisma that comes with that, right? There's an attraction to that. And then other players start saying, that's the way I'm going to do things. You know what? This guy, he seems to be so successful in his personal life and his professional life. He elevates the organization. That's how it's done. That's what I need to do. And I can tell you, it happens organically, that it cannot come down from on high. It's not like Mike Brown can come and say, hey, I'm going to make you the face of my organization, the leader of the team. I know sometimes fans see it that way. You've been around these players. You and I, it emerges from places and maybe you didn't even think it would come from sometimes, Charlie.
So very interesting for your perspective on this. So like, who are the people that were voted the Bengals captains this year in August? Von Bell doesn't play much anymore. He played some third downs yesterday, but I would expect you're going to say that it's hard to be that type of guy when you've had your role reduced to that capacity. It's Sam Hubbard, who elite locker room guy, obviously not playing well. Let's kind of put him to the side here. It's Mike Hilton, but he was a captain last year. This year, he didn't get voted a captain again, even though I saw him as the most consistent voice in that locker room. Then from an on-field perspective, you get your role reduced to the capacity he has with him, where he's taken off the field on third downs. And then a guy who kind of got that captain spot was Jermaine Pratt, who's the only, guy in this group who, is playing every single snap. And Pratt, we discussed after the Chargers game, not an impressive, inspiring moment when he called out Cam Taylor-Britt on the sideline like he did after the Chargers game. You look at his tackling effort. You look at his technique on some fundamental stuff yesterday in that game. And then you look at his body language after some of the big plays the Bengals allow. You look at his post-game press conference where he goes, what missed tackles? Like missed tackles weren't a theme yesterday. Well, these are the guys you've built your core around. How do you see that, when it's guys who are captains who are having their roles reduced, kind of a new voice emerging, but isn't always being the most consistent presence for the team? How do you, kind of get out of that predicament and find your leaders on a defense?
See, that's where I think when I said it cannot come from on high, the coaches can want to pick or make someone a captain. But in reality, and it is their choice, let's face it, if you're a head coach, you're going to want to designate who you believe are your team captains. You're going to want to be the guy that says, these are the guys that represent the things that I hold near and dear. So I get that part of it. But what I'm saying is it really is organic. And that's where, as a coaching staff, you've got to really be paying attention to how the players are gravitating towards certain players, how they move with certain players. Now, that player also needs to represent who you are as a coach and the culture. And that's why you got to always be talking to your players. You got to be finding out who they are. And if they're not representing that, you got to make sure you're molding them into that, because you are ready to bestow upon them really great responsibilities. And sometimes it comes and they don't even know it. Hey, these guys are watching you. All the young guys seem to want to be around you, want to follow you. Now I need to know which way you're going to lead them. Are you going to lead them a different direction than the rest of the coaches? Are you with us on this? And sometimes that player, even if he's designated as the captain, what if he gets hurt early in the season and can't play? He still has to be an impact on your locker room. So to me, it shouldn't come down to how much is he going to be on the field for us this year? Are we going to limit his role? He still is a leader. He still should be keeping guys understanding how to remain engaged, even if they're not on the playing field. You can still lead, even if you're not the guy out there. Players understand if you're injured. Players understand where you're at in the trajectory of your career. I've seen leaders. I've seen people lead the team who barely even get on the field. They're aging out, right? They're aging out. And I still see them the ones calling the team together and say, hey, guys, here's what we need to do. Because they have pelts on the wall. They've had success in this league. Everyone understands that there's a cycle to this. And so I do think it's about understanding who are the people in your locker room that really, when it gets tough, when it gets hard, they're going to stay the course. And they're going to continue to pull people in the right direction. I got to ask you about this, because this is the big elephant in the room, Charlie. Joe Mixon yesterday just set an NFL record, right? Most player with 100 yards rushing and rushing touchdowns, 100 yards rushing in each and every game with a rushing touchdown, 6 consecutive road games, the first time it's ever been done by any player in NFL history. He seems to be a leader in that Houston Texans locker room. He seemed to have had a positive impact on C.J. Stroud. He's clearly more productive on a consistent basis, and he was productive here with the Bengals. He really was. But it just seems that it's gone up a notch. That's the elephant in the room. Cincinnati Bengal fans everywhere is like, what's up with this Joe Mixon? We need a guy like that even right now as we sit here. To that, you say what?
I think the Bengals made lots of mistakes this offseason. I don't think letting Joe Mixon go was a mistake. And we probably see different perspectives on this. I think Chase Brown in a lot of different areas, especially with the versatility in his game and the explosiveness in his game, has just outproduced Joe Mixon this year. I think if you gave the Texans some truth serum, listen, I know Mixon's playing great, but that offense looks broken. And CJ Stroud is having a very frustrating year. He gave him some true serum and said, would you have rather had a guard or a center making $10 million a year than Joe Mixon? And would that have helped, prevent some of these offensive issues that have kind of been the story of your season? I wonder how they'd answer that question. And then Mixon too, Mixon had to get a lot of things in Cincinnati, things that he specifically earned. He was a captain. He was a multi-time Pro Bowler. He earned those things, but it did open up some opportunities for what the offense as a whole looked like when the Bengals went in a different direction. The problem was that when you lose Joe Mixon, which made sense for football reasons, you didn't have that next guy in the system to replace him from a mentality, voice, leadership standpoint. In my opinion, again, the Bengals are better without Joe Mixon. But what had to have happened was, the next Tyler Boyd from a leadership standpoint is ready in the wings to kind of have that big presence in the locker room. Jamar Chase has done that. I give him credit for that. The offensive line, I think, hasn't played well, but has a good group of guys there kind of steering the ship. But there's been just so much turnover at tight end and in the back of that receiver room and in the running back room that it's been hard for guys to find those roles. And so it's an offense that, from a skill position perspective, is reliant on Burrow and Chase for that leadership. And they've clearly missed something because they haven't had that next wave to replace the intangible stuff, which is what they're missing the most from Mixon.
That's what I was getting ready to say. I think it's the intangibles. I don't think it's necessarily the production on field. I think the run game is good. Look, the Cincinnati Bengals have, I think, the third lowest run play percentage of any team in the league.
Yeah.
Even if Joe Mixon was here, that ratio is not going to change. You and I both know that, which is why his production is up. He's now with a team that relies more on the run, right, and less on big plays from the quarterback than, say, the Cincinnati Bengals offense, which rates, I think, third highest in pass play percentage at 67%. They're almost throwing it 7 out of 10 plays and running it 3 out of 10 plays, which you and I both know that's not 50-50. That's right. Okay, so Joe Mixon is now in an offense in Houston that is relying more on the run, so you see his production going up. I think the Cincinnati Bengals have realized that, look, this is what we are as an offense. This is who we have as a quarterback. We're going to be more quarterback-centric, more passing game heavy, and we're going to place the burden of production on our wide receivers and our tight ends. And, oh, by the way, the running backs who can catch it coming out of the backfield. So want to get your thoughts on that before we move on. As much as I like Joe Mixon, I'm not so sure that if he was still on this team that our win-loss record would be any different. Yeah,
I agree. And again, let's go back to you can't keep these guys forever, any player forever. So ultimately you're going to have to develop that new wave of, leadership and tangible bringers, specifically from an energy standpoint. I mean, Mixon was such an energy guy. And what the Bengals haven't received this year is, again, I think the offense has enough guys, but defensively they expected kind of Sheldon Rankins to be that Joe Mixon energy provider of the defense. And obviously the illness he's dealing with is unfortunate. When he's been on the field, he hasn't brought that. Geno Stone was expected to be the cerebral, he'd done it in kind of the scheme du jour in the NFL, who would bring all these ideas and consistency and steadiness to the Bengals defense. That hasn't happened. Pratt, we discussed, a captain who hasn't, filled the shoes of DJ Reader from a leadership perspective. There are, Cam Taylor-Britt, perfect example. I had Mike Hilton in April telling me this is about to become Cam's defense from an off-field perspective. And his wild inconsistency has prevented that from happening. So, we could keep naming names of guys the Bengals expected to kind of fill some of this void, and it just hasn't happened.
So it really is about just recognizing from a player development standpoint when to transition from guys who were really, truly a good fit to all the things that you just named, and then moving on from those players to the next. You got to be right when you make those decisions. And right now, it's clear that we've missed on more than a few. Charlie, good stuff, man. It's always great talking with you. We look forward to you visiting with us next week. Hopefully we'll have better things to talk about after our game in Dallas, okay?
Thanks for having me.
All the best to you. Back here on Bleav in Bengal podcast, it's time now for our Performer of the Week. Look, against that team in that game against the Pittsburgh Steelers where we lose that game 44-38, looked like we could have just kept scoring had the offense stayed on the field, but we couldn't stop them. And I really find it hard to believe, since Joe Burrow had 3 turnovers in the game. Of course, he was playing and giving it his best. Can't make him performer of the game. You know who I'm making performer of the week, by the way, which is brought to you by French Creek Roofing, Greater Cincinnati's choice for roofing, windows, and siding. Our performer of the week is Cincinnati Bengals fans who decided to sit in 23-degree weather, right, and watch the game at Paycor Stadium on Sunday when you could have been at home having some more Thanksgiving turkey. How can the Cincinnati Bengals continue to put us through this? And for you Bengals fans to go and sit and brave the cold weather. It was below freezing, 27 degrees. I think it got down to a low of about 23, by the way. And you sat through that. And to watch us lose yet another home game. Right now, the Cincinnati Bengals are 1-5 in their 6 games at home this year at Paycor Stadium. We're not holding up the home field advantage. We're not competing really well inside the AFC North Division. And for Cincinnati Bengals fans who brave the cold and freezing temperatures, they say that fatigue makes cowards of it all. No, winter, freezing temperatures makes cowards of us all, because it made a coward of me. I had to stay home and watch this one. I had to have my hot chocolate while I was watching this game. So for you Bengals fans who went down there and sat through the freezing temperature to experience yet another loss, you are a player and performer of the week. All right, now it's time to look ahead to week 14 around the National Football League. Cincinnati Bengals are going to be on the road playing against the Dallas Cowboys. You know, I just talked about how the Cincinnati Bengals are 1-5 at home in their 6 games so far this season. So are the Dallas Cowboys. In fact, they didn't win their first home game until Thanksgiving Day when they won 27-20 over the New York Giants, who have lost, I think, 8 in a row. So I think we can go into the house that Jerry built, Jerry's world, and come away with a win. They're not playing at their best. In fact, they have one of the worst rushing attacks in the National Football League. And last we checked, the Dallas Cowboys can't run the ball and they can't stop the run. But the Cincinnati Bengals, we don't run the ball. We have a 37% run play percentage, 3rd lowest in the NFL. The only team that maybe run it a little bit more than us, because they're the 4th lowest in run play percentage, is the Dallas Cowboys. They just want to throw it with Cooper Rush all over the ballpark. Come on, Cincinnati Bengals defense. We've got to be able to hold up against Cooper Rush. Got to be able to hold up against a Dallas Cowboys offense that's really struggled. Ezekiel Elliott's not the player that he used to be. And the offensive line for the Dallas Cowboys are not what they used to be. This should be a game that the Cincinnati Bengals should be able to go to Dallas and come away with a winner. We got to get our 5th win of the season right here against the Dallas Cowboys coming up on Sunday, week 14. Don't forget to join us next time, everyone. And when you do join us, let's hope it's a win.